Acción, tu revista mensual de cine y series, con los mejores estrenos de cine, fichas y reportajes coleccionables, lo último en series de televisión y 4 pósters todos los meses. Búscala en tu kiosco.
Pues muy buenas, lectores y seguidores de Acción Cine. Estamos aquí saliendo ahora mismo de la presentación del videojuego Mad Max y os vamos a poner una pequeña entrevista que hemos hecho con uno de los creadores del videojuego, uno de los diseñadores de Avalanche Studios, que han sido los responsables de crear este Mad Max, este juego en mundo abierto, que creo que la verdad a los seguidores de la franquicia cinematográfica les va a gustar bastante. Creo que va a ser una experiencia muy curiosa para todos aquellos que disfrutéis del mundo de los videojuegos, y os dejamos ahora mismo con esta entrevista que creo de verdad que os va a gustar un montón, porque sobre todo nos hemos centrado en hablar de la relación que va a tener este juego con las películas de Mad Max, tanto con la trilogía original como con Furia en la Carretera, con la recién estrenada película, y que además es una de las mejores blockbusters que hemos estrenado este año. Y creo que tiene bastante cosas que contarnos el diseñador del videojuego, uno de los diseñadores del videojuego, sobre todo lo que conforma el universo Mad Max en cine y ahora en el mundo de los videojuegos. Os dejamos con ello.
So, Mad Max, the video game.
Yep.
It's a well-loved film franchise.
Yep.
I think I can only think it adds a lot of pressure to a project like this, coming from a movie franchise. How do you deal with that kind of stuff?
Of course, as you say, it's a big, well-known universe that many people know of. It's a very characteristic feel to it, and so on. So you have to get a lot of things right. Fortunately enough, we could, in the beginning when we started to do the project, we did consult with the filmmakers. So they taught us a lot about what are the rules, how does this wasteland work, how is humans treating each other, what's not the story behind what has happened, because they didn't tell us that, but like how is the universe functioning, and what's the rules, and how do people live, and so on. So we got a lot of information to take with us. That foundation gave us the possibility to be confident that yes, we can create something in this universe that is true to the overall vision of the universe. So we had a lot of information that we could take with us to create the story, to create the characters, to create the cars of the game, and like create everything. And we were sure that we would live up to the expectations of the franchise. We did have a special person on the team, is like our story writer, and we called him Defender of the Faith. Like, so everything that we made in the game, he had to be involved in, and like he was the guy who owned the vision of the universe internally, and he was our rule book. So we went to him and it's like, would this work in this world? No, because of this or this. Redesign. But his job was super important, especially in the beginning of the game development process, to set the whole team right. So to create that, because we were only a small group who had been handed the knowledge, and then we needed to educate the whole team, and he was key part of that.
So you decided not to go with the movie, to do a completely different story.
Yep.
Why is that? I can only imagine that it would be easier to do a movie based, a game based on the movie.
If you mean, I assume you mean the latest movie.
Yes.
Now when I've seen it and watched it, I would say it would be rather hard to make a game about that movie because it's a totally different game compared to what Avalanche likes to do. We like to do open world games where the player is free to do whatever he wants. If we would have tried to recreate the movie, it would have a super linear game with events coming after each other. So I think that would be impossible. We could have possibly been more tied into the story, but I think I would say I would say it would have been harder for us to make a good game if we had like, no, you have to have that character or that character and so on. So we, like, everybody was agreeing on it should be separate from the get-go. So that has been like the rule from day one, more or less.
But there are certain things that are linkable to the movie. You can see it and say, it reminds me of something of the movie, like Gastown, like we've seen in the trailer, Thunderdome.
Well spotted.
Yes. And the Thunderdome, and even the minions from the leader, that kind of thing. How do you stay with the vibe of the movies, but do something completely different?
Yeah, it's a process it's a creative process they have to go through. As I said, we got a lot of knowledge. So like the fact that some of our cars as well is similar to the cars in the game and so on, but it's such a well researched, and the foundation of the universe is so good. So even if we run this way and they run that way, it will become very close because the foundation of how everything is working is the same. So like we had a lot of like realism has been key to us in this game. So like it's things that people don't think of very often. I don't think, but taking the car as an example, right? I know the people who made the textures for the cars in the game. They don't only it should be black and look cool. They had to go through the process. Okay, how did they make the paint for this car? Like, is that tar that makes it black, or what is it? How can they get the paint for a car in the wasteland? How can they manufacture it and so on? Which grinder have they used to grind this area of the car? And so the thought process of creating the assets for the game is really deep. Might not be noticeable in detail for everyone, but as you say, when you look at the big picture, that feeling shines through and makes the game real.
And a game like this one, a lot of people has some concern about being the wasteland so huge and being a desert. If there are going to be too many blind spots, too many thorns where there is nothing. Mm-hmm. There is a desert. How do you deal with that kind of problems?
Well, that's a kind of like a knowledge that we have acquired over the years making open world games. How much gameplay frequency do you want? Like how close should two locations be, and what can you do in between them? Like setting out, like creating the wasteland, I would say was the biggest challenge from the beginning, just because the immediate thought that gets into your head, wow, it's just empty and it's sand dunes. But then you start to talk about what we can do and how how we build it up and what content can you put in there. So it's a natural part for us at Avalanche of doing that in the beginning of the game. How big it will be or not, it's like how it's more related to. It's not so important like how many meters or miles or whatever it is. It's how fast can I travel through the world, like with my car. How fast can I go between point A and point B in relation to. If I only can walk, like then you need to shrink the game world. If I, like in other games that we have made, can fly a jet, you need to have even bigger spaces. So it's like much more in relation to the speed you can travel than actual numbers. Then creating a lot of visual variety has been challenging as well, but both from just looking at when you start out, wasteland is only sand dunes, but just looking around in our world and different parts of the world, like we have looked beyond that, but if you take deserts, for example, there are so many types of different deserts. It's like sand dunes is perhaps the thing that pops up in the head of most people, as like Sahara is the first thing, boom. But then you look at it, the rocks, like the Grand Canyon could be a wasteland, so it's totally visual theme to that compared to Sahara. So it's like there's so many different ways a wasteland can look. And one big thing we did as well in the the part where you start out to play the game is a former seabed. So we have removed the ocean from that area and kind of like used so we started to look under the water, and you see you have areas with coral reefs, you have areas with where gas comes up through the ground, and so there's a lot of different visual interesting variations in the game.
And the things to do that not to not have a lot of zones where you have nothing to do.
No, there's things to do everywhere. We do have a big area, kind of like, if you say, it's hard to describe without illustration with hands, so I'll do it in the camera. The gaming area is like the gas town area. That's where it's mostly populated and things to do. It does get thinner the further out you go, and you can go out in what we call the Great White, which is just an empty area that we're not. But to be honest, that like I can go there sometimes and just find the solitude that Max seeks, just the emptiness. There's no other ones here. It's just me in the wasteland. It's empty. It's not fun to play there, but it can be like a nice, quiet things to do, and then you turn back and you do all the activities. So there's a kind of a gradient of frequency of activities.
So the game has, and the movies has a really sense of madness.
Yep.
The name. But how did you keep some control in the gameplay for the player to feel that madness, but the game not to go too mad and become unplayable?
Well, gameplay-wise, it's not actually that hard because in pure gameplay terms, it's harder in the story to tell because the game has a kind of a deep story about Max and what goes on with his personality throughout. He as a character has a kind of a loop that he goes through in many of the movies and in the game as well, where he starts out like mad and he just wants to be alone. Then he meets people unwillingly, getting to learn them, and that makes him a little bit more human and in our terms sane again. But then bad things happens and he goes insane again. So it's a kind of like a eternal struggle for poor Max, and that was a challenge to tell that to the player in a convincing way. But I think the story writer, the cinematic team of the game they made a great job. We have a character who is called Riffa. You saw him really short in one of the trailers, who is connected to Max's inner thoughts and so on. So there's different storytelling elements that conveys the story of Max for the players who are interested in knowing more about it.
And what about the characters? What kind of characters are we going to find it, and how do you create such kind of characters when you are dealing with that kind of universe?
Yes. Again, I would fall back to the knowledge we got in the beginning of the process, and taking inspiration from all the films, but other media as well. We have a couple of very good story writers internally who wrote the story, and then we kind of like to try to find characters that are needed in the main story. I can't tell you I wouldn't dare to tell you the things that they go through because they're as crazy as the characters of the game, I would say sometimes. But again, it's a as in movies or books or TV series or games, you sit down and you think about it. Is this, again, we had the defender of the faith guy who kind of said, no, that character is too much even for this world. And this guy is not crazy enough. We need to find a twist on him and so on. So he was the champion of creating all those characters. And then we take, we often have the description of the characters, and we have a huge range of concept artists who sit down and okay, so this is the description of the character. Different artists do different takes on how that character will look, and then we start to go through, okay, this one is probably the most fitting, okay, we take that from that idea or that from that idea, and we start to combine them, and then you figure out the backstory of them, and it's really, it's a strange process because it's something you do, and at the end you feel like, no, I know this guy, I know or girl. It's like I know who that person is.
And the visuals of the game, coming from a movie franchise, movie saga, I think it has to have a more cinematic sense. Even
Absolutely,
it's harder to keep that cinematic sense in a game so wide, so huge as Mad Max is going to be.
Yeah, no, it's to creating this cinematic feel. We have cinematic moments in the game, like cinematic sequences and so on, and they obviously they then you can get much more a cinematic feel to them with camera cuts in the same style and such. But the main gameplay window, so to speak, it's hard to do cinematic camera because if you start to cut the camera and so on, the player gets totally disoriented and so on. So it's like, but I think we have found a nice balance of like the camera distance, how far am I from the main character in third person. In the car, you can, as you saw shortly as well, you can choose between like third person where you see the car from outside, or you can go inside, so like being inside, which is that camera we really made because of the cinematic aspect of it. Like I would say it's a little bit harder to play the game in the first person, especially the combat, but it is a more intense and a cinematic feel to it when I play the car combat from that camera perspective. Like I don't see all the enemies. I need to look around in a different way, and so it's a bit more challenging. But it has something. It kind of like draws you into the world of Max even better.
Last question: did you know if George Miller had the opportunity to show the game, or if he has any thoughts about this game?
It's not released yet, so I don't think he has seen it yet.
Okay, thank you very much, and congratulations.